Today, we're talking about Scotia. Scotia is one of AWC's most important sanctuaries. It was the site of AWC's first large-scale feral predator exclusion fence. It protects 65,000 hectares in the beautiful Mallee country of far western New South Wales. So it's about 150 kilometres south of Broken Hill and just north of Mildura. Scotia was initially set up as a wildlife sanctuary by John Walmsley's Earth Sanctuaries, but AWC acquired the property in the early 2000s, and we've been on site since about 2002. So this week, I'm joined by our wonderful new team at Scotia, wildlife ecologist Tali Moyle and sanctuary manager Hamish Longbottom. Tali and Hamish, thanks for joining us.
Hi Joey, thanks for having us.
Hi Joey, good to see you again.
Yeah, thank you. Now, I thought we'd start because it's Bird Week, and some of us, even in the cities, are doing backyard bird counts. And I believe you've just done your bird survey. Is that right, Tali?
Yeah, we've just completed our bird survey across all of our sites. So we have sites inside the fenced area and sites outside the fenced area. And we've been getting some really exciting records because of the rains that have recently come to Scotia. So yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, so it seems like Western New South Wales is absolutely booming with life at the moment after the rain. And this is one of the rare birds that you've detected on those bird surveys. What's this one and why is it special to see there?
This one's a scarlet-chested parrot, and we don't often get them out here very often. So we get them, we've only recorded them probably in 4 occurrences. So they're kind of in lower numbers out here and only at certain times of the year. So yeah, it was really exciting to record a male and a few females as well out here the other day.
Fantastic. And there's lots of other parrots around. So I know that there are flocks of budgies in abundance in Western New South Wales. What other bird activity have you seen during the survey?
Yeah, so probably the most exciting stuff for us is the flocks of budgies that have come in their hundreds, feeding on all the astrocypher seeds that have all popped up. We've also had cockatiels coming in. This is a juvenile white-eared honey eater. So there are lots of like little juveniles of everything around at the moment. We've also had pied honey eaters coming through, which you normally only see when conditions are really good because they kind of follow the aromophila flowers around, and because we have so many flowering at the moment, they're just everywhere at the moment.
This is one that I thought would be a bit of a challenge, and we might even get people to guess in the chat. So if you can identify this bird in the next 20 seconds, there's a prize. But this is one of the young birds, and it's quite cryptic, a bit hard to ID. So if anyone wants to guess, I might leave that one up there for a minute. So Tali, how long does the bird survey run for? And are there sites, permanent sites, that you go back to each year?
Yeah, we run the survey for 6 days, and this survey we did 48 sites, and we do each site 3 times. We do 20-minute 2-hectare plot surveys, and yeah, we have a few people doing them, so there's no bias, and just work our way around all the sites. And they're in the different habitat types as well across the sanctuary, so we make sure we survey across all the areas.
What a great time to be doing the bird survey out there. Now, we had a couple of people guess that right. Glenda guessed that it was a robin, and Greg was the first correct answer. Juvenile hooded robin, very good. All right, now we might just get a little bit about your background, each of you. So Hamish, you've worked in environmental management a lot before, and you actually came to Scotia from Mount Gibson after a stint as the sanctuary manager there. What are the differences and what's similar between Mount Gibson and Scotia?
Yeah, thanks, Joey. Probably there's quite a lot of similarities, I guess, day to day with the activities that we're doing at Scotia and Mount Gibson. Probably the biggest changes that anyone that's ever been to Scotia would know, it's heavily dominated by Mallee country, whereas there's quite a large geological diversity at Mount Gibson, which therefore makes the vegetation quite diverse as well. So yeah, there's quite a lot of different habitats at Mount Gibson in comparison to a more dominant Mallee here. But I guess, yeah, the day-to-day activities are very much similar. So, yeah, checking of 56 kilometres of fence line at least 3 times a week, doing weed control and predator control. So, yeah, we're still obviously actively monitoring cats and foxes here at Scotia, and yeah, similar to Mount Gibson, a lot of feral management happening there as well. Weeds are a pretty yeah, common thing at every sanctuary that we are dealing with. So yeah, that's another part of our job there. So yeah, I guess enough differences to make it interesting, and yeah, but enough of the same stuff that it's not complete shock when we arrived. Yeah.
Yeah, great. And I just realised I forgot to share a map. So this, for anyone who's wondering, is a location map of where Scotia sits, and it's actually right on the western border of New South Wales. So it runs right up to the edge of South Australia. And it's, you know, it's big. We often talk about the fenced area there, which is 8,000 hectares in a couple of blocks. But the whole sanctuary is actually 65,000 hectares. So, you know, it's a lot of work to look after a parcel of land like that. And Hamish, I guess, you know, being responsible for the infrastructure, Scotia's also been established for a lot longer, whereas the fence at Mount Gibson is quite new. Are there challenges as the fence ages about maintaining that important, you know, that critical piece of infrastructure?
Yeah, there definitely is, Joey. So yeah, the fence here is yeah, quite a lot older, and then a lot of differences in the design. So over time at AWC, we've obviously made some large improvements to the way we design and construct our fences, and yeah, we're dealing with one that's getting on to almost 2 decades old. So yeah, any damage that may occur due to kangaroos mostly, yeah, obviously needs to be repaired as soon as possible. And in some sections, the repair work is often not yeah, not enough, so we have to replace large sections. Yeah, just because the age of the fence and yeah, some of the weak points, yeah, we just really have to yeah, replace the whole section of fence. So yeah, it does make it a bit more challenging, but you know, it's a testament to people that have come before us that the fence is still standing and still, you know, doing its job. So yeah, it's still a great asset.
Yeah, great. I'll just mention too that if you can hear a clicking noise, it's actually cicadas which have overrun the place by the sound of things following the rain. So that's that clicking noise in the background. Tali, you've got extensive experience in ecology and ecological research. And you mentioned that you'd actually met John Walmsley at work experience. What was that like?
Yeah, he's really good. I started off in high school doing work experience at Warrawong Sanctuary and just out of Adelaide. And yeah, I met him there a few times, and he's an interesting character, but I mean, he's done like really well to set up all these fenced areas and the idea behind it and stuff. So I think it's great. Yeah, so it was really good starting off in that small fenced area and working on from there.
Yeah, and yeah, we do pay tribute to John Walmsley, who's you know, he was a real trailblazer when it came to just the concept of excluding feral predators from large-scale areas in order to restore native mammals which were missing. So you know, he's got a great legacy in that early work, which of course AWC has carried on. So we now manage the largest feral predator-free areas across mainland Australia, including at Newhaven, Mount Gibson, Scotia, and our exciting projects in New South Wales. Tali, you went on to do honours looking at one of the little native bettongs. What was your honours project about?
So I studied burrowing bettongs at Lorna Glen or Matua in Western Australia. And so I was putting radio trackers on 45 different individuals and tracking them to their home range and looking at what habitats they would hang out in more, and also looking at their warrens. And interestingly, in Western Australia, like over in Lorna Glen, one of the warrens I was trapping at had 49 different burrow entrances. So it's one of the larger warren systems there. So yeah, it was really interesting, a really exciting project.
Yeah, cool. And we've talked about these animals briefly before, but they're essentially a small kangaroo which lives in burrow systems. So, you know, something that a lot of people aren't familiar with, but a really incredible ecosystem engineer. We call them that because they turn over so much soil that they really reshape what the soil is like and what the landscape looks like. And we've seen that difference in sites where they've been reintroduced. I'm interested to hear that transformation because you guys both arrived about 6 months ago at Scotia. But when you got there, it was before a lot of this recent rain. So, Hamish, what were your first impressions when you were driving into Scotia?
What have we done? Yeah, it was very dry, Joey. Yeah, last year only about 48 millimetres of rain, and the country was yeah, very, very dry. A dust bowl is what we were referring to it in the beginning. But yeah, to see it turn around with this year's rainfall has been really refreshing for us and for the sanctuary, obviously. But yeah, it was it's been a huge contrast for sure.
Yeah, I've got some shots from earlier in the year. So has it kind of rained constantly, just on and off through the year, or how's it been? You know, how's it been distributed through time?
Yeah, I guess we've had a couple of larger downfalls. That was one there of around anything between 20 and almost 40 millimetres of rain. But yeah, we've sort of had a bit more consistency this year, sort of each month, apart from I think July was actually a dry July out here. But yeah, we've managed to get a decent amount of rain each month. So yeah, not too many really huge rainfall events, but yeah, enough definitely to help the country get back on its feet.
Hmm. And Tali, we've talked a little bit about the birds, but you know, what's the transformation that you've seen as those rainfall events have happened? Is it instant? Is there a flush of green straight away, or does it take a few months for it to really recover?
Well, I think because it was so dry out here, because last year we had 48 mils and the year before was only 118, and our long-term average is 230, so it was really quite dry. That pretty much within a few weeks of the first rains, we were starting to see seedlings pop up, and then with that backup rain of 30 mils after the first rain, everything just exploded, and we had like wild spinach all over the ground, so tetragonia covering the ground, and we had all little native forbs pop up, and we've had like cannibals, the tacarpas come up. Yeah, so in this picture we have a lot of astrostypa, and we have zygophyllums, they've all popped up, and then it's also helped recover all the shrubs that you see in the background, like the sennas and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's beautiful to see. I haven't been there for about a year, but it was you know, driving in from Mildura on that road, it really looked like Mars, like there were, you know, willies and you know, just dust for large parts of it. Luckily, Scotia has a lot of intact vegetation, so even in a difficult drought time, it's actually in good condition relative to a lot of the country that's overgrazed and has a lot of feral goats and things like that. So, you know, it becomes even more important as a refuge for animals in that wider landscape at those times. We've also briefly mentioned that Scotia is a really important site for reintroduced mammals. Tali, what are the mammals that have been re-established within the feral predator-free fenced area at Scotia?
So we've got numbats here, we've got bilbies, bridled nail-tail wallabies, woylies or brush-tailed bettongs, and also the booties or the burrowing bettongs out here.
And they're all species that obviously respond to conditions. So we do see a fluctuation in their numbers as it dries out and as good conditions return again. Have you noticed breeding activity after the rain in those reintroduced mammal populations?
Yeah, so we did trapping surveys in May, so just after some of the first rain, and pretty much most of the females, so up to 80%, all had pouch young, and so that's a really good sign of them bouncing back, because previous to that...
Is that the burrowing bettongs or...?
Yeah, the burrowing bettongs, yeah. And also the bridal narwhal wallabies have a lot of pouch young at the moment as well. So, yeah.
And some beautiful photos that you've taken in the time you've been there of those animals, which really do respond very quickly. And we know that, you know, things like bilbies, when conditions are right, their numbers can grow very rapidly. So we hope they're taking advantage of the good times at Scotia at the moment. Lovely animals. Now, another part of the land management program there is fire, and we've often talked about fire on the webinar program, but in the Mallee country, it's quite different to the sorts of fires that we conduct in Northern Australia, that prescribed burning program up there. In the north, of course, it's a monsoonal system, so there's a wet season every year, followed by intense vegetation growth, and that's when we try and do our prescribed burning. But the Mallee's a little bit slower, isn't it, Hamish? So fire operates a bit differently in that landscape. Do you want to talk about the prescribed burning you've done in the last couple of weeks at Scotia?
Yeah, thanks, Roy. Yeah, I guess the differences that we're looking at, the Mallee country is quite a different ecosystem. And in the last few years, you wouldn't have even considered doing any large amount of burning with the low rainfall. You would just be doing a lot of damage to the vegetation, which wouldn't be able to recover that well from fire. So this year we've had that opportunity with a bit of extra soil moisture and moisture in the vegetation, so that we can burn knowing that the recovery is still going to be good. So yeah, that's been a huge difference. And the size of our burns are relatively small, definitely in comparison to our northern sanctuaries. But yeah, they are quite technical in a lot of ways. A lot of the areas that we're focusing on this year are for more infrastructure and asset protection. So yeah, a lot of it is along some of our fence line. So it's got to be managed really carefully, really cool burns, and yeah, low intensity. So we're not aiming for a scorched earth type of result, even though some of the photos they may look a bit distressing to some people who may never have seen fire in the Mallee. But this is still regarded as a cool burn, and those mallees will spring back to life. The understory will definitely come back, and you've also got a good mix of chemicals that are provided by the ash and germination from the actual intense heat on those species. So it does actually increase all of the biodiversity following fire as well, which is really good.
So with an operation like this, how does it get done? So you've obviously got objectives that you want to meet, you know, when conditions are right. But then what's the actual work on the ground? How many of you are out there doing this work? Do you do it at a particular time of day? What's a day in that that burning operation?
Yeah, there's a huge amount of planning that goes into it before we even strike a match. We look at everything from obviously the safety aspects for all the staff involved and all the people that aren't involved but are still on the sanctuary, and also looking out for any potential numbat hollows and any other animals that might be in the area, mallee fowl mounds, any threatened plant species or communities. So yeah, we take into account all of those factors before we even get started. And then once we are ready to burn, obviously there's keeping an eye on the weather, burning only on suitable days, and constantly monitoring the fire behaviour and weather conditions throughout the burn. So to reduce the intensity of the fire that we're actually trying to create, we start in the afternoons generally, and working with the relative humidity so that we don't ever burn too hot and too fast, so that we end up doing more damage than we're actually wanting to. So it's can be tricky sometimes, but it's well worth the result in the end.
Yeah, and as you said, it's these are very targeted, very strategic burns. And you can see, even in this photo, it's taken in the evening, so it does look a bit dramatic. It's actually a fantastic shot. But it's really just burning clumps of spinifex underneath that canopy of mallee. And all of those adult trees are very resilient to fire. We know that spinifex is able to come back quickly. So that's actually a lovely burn, isn't it, through mallee country?
Yeah, that's pretty much what you're hoping for in this type of environment. And I guess to make it a bit more, give it a bit more clarity. So the reason that we're burning those particular sections this year is because they're the most flammable parts of the sanctuary. So that mallee spinifex, in a wildfire situation, will move through that very quickly. And so, these areas that we're burning will hopefully at least slow that any potential wildfires down. Hopefully we don't have any, but that's the goal in that. So they're not moving through our fenced area and impacting a larger area than we can handle, I guess.
Yeah, really important work. Tali, for the science program this year, so in just 6 months you've run a number of surveys out there, but due to COVID, you haven't been able to get the volunteers who regularly help out with this kind of thing. How have you been able to manage the workload out there with the staff that you have available?
It's been actually pretty all right, because we did a lot of, we did the Woylie surveys, the booty surveys, we've done marla surveys and spotlighting for bridal nail-tail wallabies and also bilbies. But because of COVID, we didn't want to bring too many additional people to site. And so we decided as a team we'd work together. So me and Hamish obviously worked together pretty well and decided that we could share the workload between us. And so I asked if we could use all the land management officers as support systems for our field ecologists. And so we've been able to manage most of the surveys in-house, or sometimes with support from other sanctuaries like Mallee Cliffs, who have been really great coming up. It's only 2 hours away, so they can help us out as well. But most of the surveys we've tried to keep in-house to limit that movement. But I think it's a really good team building, working together on why we're doing this out here, and also getting the staff involved with some of the projects they might not have a chance to all the time. So like the land management officers are normally busy with their kind of work, so like weed or fence work, but actually getting them out to come and handle or like practice handling animals, and seeing why they're doing it, I guess, really puts that bigger picture in.
Yeah, I think that's that's what we often talk about as what makes AWC unique, and it's that very close integration of our scientific research and monitoring with the hands-on land management and operations side. And that's a really good example of how both teams can help each other out to get something done on the sanctuary. So that's really good to hear. I've just got so many good photos from you, Tali, that I'd like to share. And this is another one of the birds that has visited following the rain. So it's a bird that you would normally associate with kind of wetter areas, I suppose, or I would anyway. Can you describe this nest that you found?
Oh, so this is the banded lapwings. We had a pair arrive a few months ago now, and they set up shop next to our dam, which at that stage didn't have any water in it, but there was a bit of greenery around, and these birds, they lay their nest just in an open space on the ground, and they lie in open space because of predators that might come, and so they can see them coming. And if anyone's ever seen lapwings at all, they are pretty good at protecting their nest. And so this one was pretty close to the road, so we were actually able to monitor it from the car. But even with the car, the birds would do their little displays, and especially when the chicks were born. And so from egg to chick, it's 28 days. And so we had 4 little chicks running around. And if you get too close, the parents come and have a go at you. But I also watched them, protecting their chicks from ravens and other birds flying over. They go after them pretty heavily to get them away from them. And this photo is of she had 4 little chicks, and just at night time they'd all kind of tuck under her and for protection and warmth. So it was really cute to watch them. Yeah, but it's also great to have ground nesting birds out in the sanctuary, because outside of the area, even though they can still survive, it's a less likelihood when there's cats and foxes around. And so having the fenced area with ground nesting birds is great to see.
And you've got another survey coming up looking at one of the mammals. How do you do numbat surveys?
Yeah, so we're just about to start numbat surveys next week. We do driving transects for them. So we have two different teams, because we've got the two different stages to do transect driving, and we repeat these surveys. So we drive along at 10 kilometres an hour, so it's quite slow. And we have someone driving and two people on the back spotting for numbats. And so we just, drive along really slowly, spot numbats, and then we, work out a population from there. But yeah, there are other ways of picking them up, and there's a PhD student in WA at the moment trialing camera surveys to see if that's a better method. And if at the moment the best method, and what most people use, like even in Dryandra in WA, is the driving method to get a population estimate. But it can be tricky because they are hard to spot, and they're not always consistent in the same area, so harder to survey for.
Yeah, but they are active during the day, so at least there's that. You can go out without a torch and have a chance of seeing them there.
Yeah. So like I drive out on the weekends to have a look for them anyway as well, and some of the photos I've taken are from ones that I've spotted and have let me hang around next to them while they continue about their day. So yeah, it's really, really interesting.
Yeah, great. Excellent. Thank you so much for telling us about your work. I think we've got time to take some questions now. So if anyone who's watching does have a question, you can use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, and we'll try and get to some of those before we finish up. So feel free to use that one. We've got a question here, quite a particular one about birds. So spinifex birds. Do spinifex birds occur at Scotia?
We don't actually get spinifex birds out here. They're more located in Western Australia and up in Northern Territory area as well.
Right. Yeah. Another question here is asking about whether predators have been completely cleared from Scotia, and I think that's something I can probably offer some clarity on. So there's the fenced area there, which covers 8,000 hectares, stage 1 and stage 2. And that has absolutely no cats or foxes or goats in it. Outside of the fence, of course, there are some cats and foxes, but we've conducted our feral predator research project just to the west of the fenced area at Scotia. And you can actually hear more about that in one of the webinars we did previously with Dr. Andrew Carter. But outside the fence, there are cats and foxes. We've done extensive targeted control of foxes. And at this point, we're monitoring how that affects the density of cats, because there's an interaction between those different predators, of course. But Tali, what about the long-term picture? I mean, we've got populations of these animals in a relatively secure, safe space inside the fence. Is there the prospect of releasing them outside the fence one day? What do you think is the best hope for that?
I think the long-term goal is always to release the species on the outside, and that's our aim. With doing this cat and fox research on the outside, it gives us a better understanding of how the predators work, and then we have more research on the species inside, so we can understand how they relate to outside as well. But yeah, hopefully eventually we will be able to get some of these species on the outside. I have worked in a place where they did release bilbies on the outside of the fence, and since then they've been doing really well. So it is achievable, but I think it's just working out each location and what predators, how they work, and how these species can live together in those areas.
And Hamish, I guess from your point of view, that the fence is such an important piece of infrastructure. Do you ever lose sleep over whether something's happened to the fence, or there's been some incursion?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Probably like an ongoing paranoia that's probably pretty healthy for a sanctuary manager. But yeah, I guess you just get comfortable with that sort of state of mind after a little while. But yeah, I guess you just do take comfort in the fact that it is getting checked regularly. We've got really good staff here who are on the ball, and as soon as there are any little issues that come up, they're dealing with them. So yeah, I think we're managing it really well, and it is across the board. And yeah, I'm always going to be thinking something's going to happen, but that's just me.
Yeah, and good to emphasise too that we've never had an incursion of cats and foxes due to a failure in the fence. So we can have confidence in that design of fence. So it's an incredibly successful design that we've got out there. Great. I've got some more photos here, and we've got hundreds and hundreds of photos that we could show you, but I want to show you some of the wildflowers that are now in bloom at Scotia. If you don't follow us on social media, you might have missed these, but we've got a fantastic album of photos up on Instagram and Facebook. So go and check them out, but I'll give you a sneak preview here with some of the wildflowers that Tali has captured out at Scotia. What's this one, Tali?
This one's Waltzia, so it's an orange immortal, and this species is actually found all over WA as well, so it's pretty widespread, but when the conditions are right, they just pop up and you do get them spreading through the mallee here, so they're really cool to see. Another
little blue one.
This one's a Helgania, the blue mallee flower, and it's really pretty flower, and in some of the previously burnt areas, they've come up a lot. And this one's the Sturt Desert Pea, which we have a little pocket of, which is really great to see. Like they're really lovely.
Yeah, I didn't realise they came that far into New South Wales too, or that far south. So that's fantastic. Well, it seems like it's flourishing out there, and I can't wait to get back out and see what Scotia looks like now. We'll see if we've got any more questions here. So we've got another one here about kangaroos, and whether kangaroos, there's a few species of larger kangaroos out there. Do they pose a threat to the fence, Hamish?
Yeah, unfortunately they do, Joey. It's probably the only thing that really does impact from the outside, apart from the occasional storm that may impact the fence. But yeah, they are an ongoing management issue for us, and just careful management of those is what we need to do, and that's basically why we do at least 3 fence checks a week. Is just being really diligent, making sure any of those potential weak points are managed really carefully. So
yeah, we've had another question here, and we quite often talk about how technology is changing the way that we carry out some of our activities, especially in science and monitoring. Someone here is wondering if drones could be used to check the fence as a way of monitoring without having to drive it every couple of days.
Yeah, that's been discussed quite a bit. I don't know how that would go, like with our current situation, and sometimes I think, you can't really beat human sort of assessment of fences. Like it's, I guess, one thing to have a drone going around looking for any potential damage or weak points, but at the end of the day, if there is something, someone's still got to go out there and deal with it, unless you can find a drone that will fix fences for you as well. So yeah, there's sort of nothing better than somebody actually on the ground, driving, looking, and checking all those areas. So if someone knows of a drone that can do fencing, please let me know.
I think your job is safe for the moment, Hamish. They can't operate a Leatherman at the moment. Okay, look, we've got a few more questions, but I think we'll have to leave it there. And if we didn't get to your question, I do apologise, but we'll try and provide more information. Don't forget, our website also has lots of information about all of our sanctuaries, all of our field programs, the science, land management, and the research that we've done. So do go to our website. That's also where you can make a donation. So if you've been inspired by the work and you'd like to support Hamish and Tali and their fantastic work out at Scotia, please consider doing that. The website is australianwildlife.org. Next week, I'm speaking to a member of our executive team, and this is Chief Operations Officer James Hewitt. James has been with AWC for about a year and a half, and he's in charge of all of our operations and land management around the country. So a really huge job. So that'll be at the same time next Thursday. You can register on our website or in the invite, which we'll email out later today. Thank you very much for everyone who's tuned in, and thank you so much for your support, because none of this work is possible without you. I hope I'll see you next week. And thank you so much again to Hamish and Tali for being my guests on AWC in Conversation.
Thanks, Joey.
Yeah, thanks, Joey.
Great to chat to you.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.